That's right. Since you're against this,
Yes,
I'll take yours.
we just have to take yours. We divvied it up.
Christmas tree day at work. Yep. And then you put it back up.
Jenna's had hers up since like.
It offends
No.
someone person. I'll say the same.
I have been pushing and I talked to Ryan.
Although they take their Christmas bonus stuff.
Yeah.
I know a lot.
And my job's changing, so I have to.
Can you divide it? Bring it over here.
Now my job is changing. My work and stuff. I do, but I work for the and that's my main source of income. They got bought out by a private company, so.
Call to order tonight's meeting for the Bedford County School Board, regular meeting. Ms. Johnson, if you will, please take roll.
Mr. Hill,
Here.
Mr. Daniels.
Here.
Mr. Holbrook.
Here.
Dr. Hubach, Mr. Knight.
Here.
Mr. Nelms.
Here.
Mrs. Purvis. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. And Mr. Hubach had notified me that he would not be here tonight due to family obligation. All right, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Have a motion by Ms. Purvis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Daniels. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda is approved. If you will, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Have a moment of silence. Thank you. All right, we'll go to 2.01, Superintendent's Report. Mr. DePere.
Thank you. The Virginia Department of Education is currently finalizing the school performance and support framework for elementary, middle, and high school, which is the format used to fulfill requirements for Every Student Succeeds Act to identify specific categories of school performance and also provide diagnostic tools all schools can use to identify the areas of strong performance and areas that need support. And a side note there, while the while the whole format has been established, they are still tweaking calculations inside of the formulas. So this is something that's been going on for about a month. And Dr. Woodford and I have been in meetings where they are still tweaking how that data comes out. But for the most part, it is set. It's just now calculating in certain data points. The school's overall performance will be evaluated in FY 25-26 using a new index with weights depending on grade band based on three primary components. The new framework ends the tracking of student subgroups and is moving forward to an overall calculation of mastery, reading, math, science, and progress in English language proficiency. Number two, expected growth in reading and math. And number three, readiness, which involves chronic absenteeism at this point. At the high school level, graduation replaces growth and readiness and includes a component for Ready for Life 3E framework. That framework includes enrollment for college, employment, career, enlisted military. So, like I said before, that is established. It's still being tweaked for calculations, but for the most part, it's done. Executive Order 33, bell-to-bell cell phone free schools. On January 6th and 7th, we will initiate the use of Yonder Pouch in the middle and high schools as an implementation tool for Governor Youngkin's Executive Order 33, bell-to-bell cell phone free schools. As we move toward January 6th, we not only need to continue to identify and address the impact on academic performance and addiction behaviors associated with the smartphone use in our schools, but we also need to partner with parents on how they can join the effort to untether our students at home as well. That I state because there is a second executive order that the governor has now put out, which I want to make sure that everybody understands. On November 21st, 2024, Governor Youngkin introduced Part 2 of his Cell Phone Free Schools initiative to establish an Executive Order 43, empowering and supporting parents to protect their children from addictive social media, and the Reclaiming Childhood Task Force. The purpose of this task force will drive collaboration and innovation from 14 Virginia governmental agencies to support educators and parents as we create a healthy environment where students can focus on learning, health, well-being, both at school and home. The task force will promote screening for unhealthy internet and social media use in the youth and provide resources to address the issue for families. It will also provide specialized training for healthcare providers to support treatment of behavioral health concerns linked to social media and other types of problematic internet use. It will provide parents with a social media and mental health toolkit to help navigate the digital world and promote healthy social media use. The task force will also emphasize prevention strategies to promote healthy nutrition, exercise, and other non-screen related activities to support wellness. As stated earlier, on Monday, January 6th, Bedford County will move into an implementation phase of the governor's bell-to-bell cell phone free school initiative, and we need everyone on board for the betterment and support of our students, families, faculty, staff, and administration. I thank you in advance for consideration and cooperation. If you have not done so yet, I urge you to look at Executive Order 43 and also look at Executive Order 33 and the governor's wife's discussion with Dr. Jonathan Haidt, the author of The Anxious Generation. I am confident that it will give you a better understanding of the crisis we face nationwide, in Virginia, and in Bedford County as well. Thank you for your consideration and support as we move forward. Congratulations are in order for Ms. Nikki White on being named Bedford County Public Schools Teacher of the Year. For 14 years, Ms. White has significantly impacted Jefferson Forest High School community through her passion for arts and her extensive Broadway experience. As a leader of the Cavalier Theater Department, she inspires students to embrace their talents and their spirit of performance. Beyond her work in theater, Ms. Smith also teaches dance and serves as the chair of Related Arts Department and as a leader in the fine arts community at JFHS. We thank her for her hard work, dedication, creativity, and her unwavering passion for teaching. Holiday schedules coming up. Let me remind you that we are closed for Christmas and New Year holidays from Friday, December 20th to Friday, January 3rd, 2025. The last day of the first semester for students is Thursday, December 19th and Friday, December 20th, serving as a professional development day for all BCPS faculty and staff. Schools reopen on Monday, January 6th. I wish you all a happy holiday and a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. This concludes the superintendent's report.
Staff reports 2.02, 25-26 membership forecast. Mr. Blankenship.
Thank you. We've been doing this report annually for at least 13 or 14 years. And I wanted to give you a little background on it. We use the methodology from the Weldon Cooper Center, which is out of University of Virginia. And that site is coopercenter.org. If you ever want to look at some interesting articles and things about what's happening with demographics in the state and in the school system, that's a great resource. I will tell you that our school division is kind of mirroring what we're seeing in the state, in that we're seeing declines in enrollments, and demographics seem to be affected by a few different things. The births have fallen, and every year since 2007, and that seems to mirror very closely what we're seeing as kindergarten enrollment 5 years after. So if we look at the births this year, we're probably going to be right around that, or a little bit less in 5 years. The state is saying, that our graduating classes are starting to go down in numbers as well. So it's kind of like across the board, we're starting to see lower and lower numbers. We topped out in 2006 was our highest year at 10,961. that fall. We had 10,961 students, and it's basically been a decline except for 1 year every year since then. So we've averaged losing about 128 students a year. During the pandemic, we lost 346 from year to year that year. The state lost about 40,000, and Weldon Cooper has published some documents saying that those students just aren't coming back. So the percentage statewide of students that are being what they call privately educated, which could be homeschool, it could be private school, it's about, what they're estimating is about 14% across the state. Now, in different areas of the state, you see that higher and lower. If you look at their projections for how many school-age children, this is census data now that comes from Weldon Cooper. Bedford County in 2023, they estimated that there were 13,681 students, and that's age 5 to 19. So if you look at our enrollment, that fall, we had 8,811 students. So that's about 64% of those students being educated in public school. So quite a bit of students that are being educated outside. I know we have grown quite a bit in our homeschool numbers. I just checked before I came over here. We've had 1,475 notices of intent for homeschool come in for this school year. So that's quite a bit up. We did go up during the pandemic, and it just hasn't come back down. At this rate, they project out for 2030 that there's going to be about 13,927 students of school age in Bedford County. And if our projections are accurate, which they've been pretty accurate, we're going to be dropping down to about 59% of our students in Bedford County being educated in public schools. So that Weldon Cooper Center also, they do the same methodology that I do. Basically, they publish their methodology and you're free to use it if you'd like to. Years ago, former superintendent encouraged us to go ahead and do our own. I think one of the reasons was because Weldon Cooper sometimes was a little bit more inflated, and Randy may be able to add some to this, but at the time we were getting some numbers and expecting more students than we were actually getting, so we wanted to do it ourselves, and it's actually come in pretty close. For 2024, this fall, we projected 8,688 students. Weldon Cooper projected 8,713, and it actually came in at 8,656. So we were 32 off, and they were about 70 some off, I think it was. We feel like this forecast is pretty accurate in terms of the 5-year overall. We've also applied it to like a 1 year so we can work with schools on staffing and other things, projections for next year. And we look at the different zones, the Forest, the Liberty Zone, and the Stanton River Zone, to kind of just get an idea of how those zones are either growing or staying steady, or in some cases decreasing. So I just want to walk through the first couple of tables here. You can see there our school membership from 2021 through 2024. That's actual reported data in Table 1. Table 2 is what we're projecting for the next 5 years. That's from this point, this fall, to 2029, we're projecting to go down 375 students. The visuals with the figures there just kind of show points on a graph of what to kind of expect in terms of the decrease if this happens. Table 3 on page 2 there has membership by grade, and as you can see there, long time ago we had quite a few grade levels that were over 700. Some of them were even over 800 students in a grade. Very few of those on the table now. Most of them are even going down to like kindergarten around 600 for the next 5 years is what we're projecting. So the methodology basically projects from year to year. If you are looking at it, we have 12 ratios, students that move from kindergarten to first, first to second, second to third. And if you look at it in a way of, if you have 100 students last year in kindergarten and this year you've got 100 students in first grade, that's a 1, okay? It's just a 1-to-1 ratio. If we grew from last year to this year, it's gonna be over 1. If we decreased from last year to this year, so if we went from 100 students to 98, it would be a 0.98. We've averaged all those ratios together and applied them to our enrollment. So this kind of is a mathematical way of looking at it. It does not take into account immediately, like if we knew there was an influx of refugees coming into our county from say a hurricane, or if we knew there was a new housing development being built in a certain area, we would not add anything to that. This basically is looking at the past 10 years of data and saying, this is what we usually see from grade level to grade level. In the forest zone this past year, 9 out of the 12 ratios were above 1. So that meant there was some growth in 9 out of the 12 grade levels. In the other zones, I think there was 6 out of 12 in the Stanton River zone and 4 out of 12 in the Liberty zone that had shown growth. So if that tells you anything, it tells you that some grade levels in those zones showed a little bit of growth, but the ratios are showing that there's a decrease in those zones, and that's what the actual data shows. So when we look at figure 2, that gives us kind of a high and a low. The green line in the middle will show us how our projection is. We're projected to kind of slightly decrease over the next 5 years. Now, if we were to see growth, and if we were to see additional students enrolling and coming maybe back from homeschool or maybe moving into the area, then we might be moving up towards the blue line where we're just kind of holding even at the 8,700 student mark. If something were to happen, another pandemic, or I hate to say that, but another something happen where we lose a lot of students or people choose to move their students out of public schools, then we're looking more towards the pink line at the bottom and we might see more of a decrease. And that actually reaches out below 8,000 if it's on the low end. So for the zone memberships, you can see there that the forest zone is the first one up. Most of that decrease over the years, they kind of actually are projected to hold steady or even tip up a little bit next year, and then kind of decrease over the next 4 years after that. Most of that is what I mentioned before with the births being lower, the birth numbers being lower, as you can see there. Some of those classes up towards the 9, 10, 11, 12 are well over 300 students, and then we're coming in, bringing back in 250, 260 students, so we're just losing students off the top there. Liberty Zone, we see a decrease over 5 years of about 166 students. That's what we're projecting. Class sizes in that zone average about 173 students across that table 9 for the Liberty Zone, which is about, they're kind of settling out there. I mean, some of the projected kindergartners, kindergarten classes there are down in the 150s, so it is possible that we see a slight decrease there over the years. And it is projected in the graph there, you see, even with some growth in the zone, they probably still are going to go down to close to around 2,200 even if we see growth or below that. The Stanton River Zone, I will have to tell you that the table 11, that has to be corrected. That when we post it on the website, we'll correct that. The table 12 is really the accurate numbers. So you can see there that we're showing kind of a leveling out of the Stanton River Zone at around the 2,400 level for the next 5 years. And we're seeing class sizes there that are pretty equal what's coming in kindergarten as to what we're seeing at the higher grade levels in 9 through 12. So we feel like that's gonna be kind of a steady zone in terms of not a whole lot of decrease. So the next table 13 is what I was talking about earlier when we go to our 1-year forecast for next year. We actually break that down by numbers of students in each grade level. This is only K through 12. I will mention that. Some of these schools do have pre-K programs in their buildings. And you can see when we get to the last table, I've added the number of slots for pre-K. So it kind of gives you a more accurate judge of the space or capacity in each school. But these are the numbers that finance and HR use for budgeting for next year. As you can see down at the division total at the bottom, really only 9th and 10th grade over 700 students in the grade level. And that number we projected for next year is 586. I don't really want to get into capacities too much because we've had these discussions many times, but this is the way that capacities have been calculated in the past. And of course, we've had a few studies. Some of them are now probably getting kind of old in terms of one was done in 2002, and then I think some of the more recent studies have kind of used the same methodology. But the capacity looks at elementaries, middles, and highs in terms of how many students we would have in a general ed classroom. So it would be 20 for elementary, 23 for middle, and 25 for each teaching station, which is a classroom where courses are taught. And they kind of figure in a little bit of a utilization factor in middle and high. So maybe you could use rooms for different things. Teachers could be moving about the school and have a little bit more capacity if you did that. So that is basically looked at and put into a number of total capacity. This table 14 comes from Hayes C, Mattern and Mattern, and the EMG study from 2016 was also the same thing. Some of these were added. I think Liberty Middle School has obviously been built since that, and Forest Middle has been renovated up to a 1,200 student capacity. So this is our total capacity for the division would be 11,745 students in our schools. The last page, table 15, is where we would calculate that percent capacity I mentioned. We take our projected enrollment and divide it by the capacity and come out with a percentage. You see there I've added in our pre-K. Basically, if you add in the slots that are allocated for each pre-K at the schools, which could change, but right now we're saying it's going to be the same. It adds a little bit more capacity, or a little less capacity to like Bedford Primary. If you didn't have the pre-K in there, it would be 61% capacity, and if you figure in the pre-K, it's up to 78. So some of these schools you can see are really pushing it in terms of capacity in the school. Huddleston, Moneta, and New London and Forest are the big ones that are right at or getting close to capacity. Otter River we left on there because that's kind of a hard to staff school, I believe, in terms of the grade levels are not large enough maybe in some of them to put 2 teachers in a grade level, but too large sometimes to put just 1. So it's kind of one of those things where adding in these outside transfer students without any kind of guide on how many you're letting in, if you just opened it wide open, you might end up with some odd numbers for staffing. So that's why we left them on the list as closed zone transfers. And I think a lot of these schools, even the ones that aren't highlighted, have certain grade levels where we would deny a zone transfer possibly because it's just so many students in the grade level we can't staff it that way. So it would be, these overall would be closed to anybody, non-resident, in-county transfer. But some of the other schools may have certain grade levels that would not, be appropriate to let a student in at that certain grade level. So we look at them on a case-by-case basis. We do start that process by the policy on March 1st. So we already had a couple come in for this coming school year, where people want to move from maybe one school zone to another, and some of that is due to childcare, transportation, all different kinds of reasons. But those will be coming up soon in March. So if there are any changes to this, if the board would like to take any school off the closed list or add any school, we certainly would want to try to get that done before March, when we actually start reviewing those, because we tell our principals, this is what the board has approved for your school, and principals are sticking to that, not letting in any outside zone transfers, and then reviewing those that are in height grade levels, I would say. All right, that's all I have. Any questions about the report?
So of the, I think you said 1475 for homeschool.
Yeah.
For this coming,
Right
Right
well, yeah, for this year so far.
so that number does not include students who are Bedford County virtual, right? That's
Correct.
homeschool separate.
That's
curriculum.
correct.
Okay. How many, do you know how many are Bedford County virtual students?
I don't.
Do you mean how many do we have?
Mhm.
At last count, 26, I believe.
Okay, and of the 1475 that are homeschooled, is there any type of survey or conversation, even if it's an anecdotal thing, of interest in being Bedford County virtual?
No, we have not contacted him. That's, some of these parents are homeschool all the way. They've always homeschooled. They've got 6, 7, 8, 9 kids in homeschool. And then we have not approached them about coming into another program. A lot of them are set in their program that they've been using for years. I know that a lot of programs have grown, just popped up over the last just 5 years, really. Free State's got a new building over here next to where the old Hardee's building was. Compass Academy is kind of a co-op that's done in Brookfield Church. They have really grown a lot, so it's kind of up to the parents. But I mean, if that's something that
Well, and
we kind of had said virtual, we were cutting back on virtual, and so that's another reason why we haven't.
The reason I bring it up is I have children who are in the public school and homeschool. I have both. And at this point, and we've done homeschool for years now, for various reasons. For the most part, homeschool these days, when you do it the way you should do it, really does include a virtual aspect to it, whether you're with a school out of Florida or whatever you're doing. So my point to that is, if we're losing students to homeschool, it seems to me that we should at least consider and talk about, ramping up our virtual program versus ramping down, because that's students that we could potentially still maintain as Bedford County students if we're offering the type of virtual program that can compete with what they're getting, whatever. And I'm saying that from a personal standpoint. I mean, there's reasons that people homeschool. Maybe the parents travel a lot. I travel a lot. Or maybe it's sick grandparents that they're taking care of. There's many different reasons, right? And so anyways, I just feel like this number seems to be growing.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think it's going anywhere.
Well, I don't know how, I've been doing it now for for 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years. And I certainly would like to see it go back down because it's just myself and Mrs. Hill doing that, and it's steadily grown. We've tried to keep up as best we can with it, but they keep coming.
Yeah.
And
It's not
No.
just Bedford County, this is a
oh
nationwide
no,
thing.
I
So-
agree.
Well, and I
agree.
think if that is a priority of the board, we need to consider staffing, because right now we have not been putting staffing at our virtual program, because we've been focused in putting that in the schools. A lot of times we see Virginia has very laid-back homeschool rules. So we'll often see when truancy for students starts to ramp up, parents pull them to homeschool so that they're not in trouble with truancy. So we'll see a lot of fluctuation during the year, especially as our court things rise and
Yeah,
fall.
we got report next week from.
But it definitely is something that if it's a budget priority, we need to talk about that in budget work sessions, because we have not been putting the staff there that,
I mean, if, and I totally understand, and coming from Tennessee, it was much more stringent on homeschooling than here. You know, and there are families probably that enter homeschool for maybe a reason that isn't as good as another family, but if we're talking about, 1,400 plus students and it's growing, and we can compete with a good virtual program, let's say we bring in, half of that, that's 500 students that we're bringing back into the Bedford County pool, if you will, which affects our funding and our sports programs and our clubs and all sorts of things, right? So,
we did a lot of surveying of our homeschool parents right after the pandemic to try to pull them back in. We didn't really get a lot with that. And then a lot of the students that we are struggling with on the truancy side, we also have that application program in Bedford Connects, because we want to be sure there's parent support. We want to be sure there's good internet. We want to be sure that somebody's there with the kids. So, I mean, we can definitely shift some of that over. The other thing I think we see sometimes with our virtual program is that we can't get kids in to do the required testing from the state. So again, that kind of adds and ramps up for our staff in having to try to get those kids in. How do you make that work? And so it's definitely something we can look at. We pulled back from it because just we didn't have the staff to be able to do it 100%.
and the last thing I'll say is I think there was a belief, not just here, but amongst people in general, that after the pandemic, things would kind of come back to normal. And I don't see that. And I don't think the numbers show that.
No, and I think that's some of the articles on the Weldon Cooper Center say that those kids are not coming back. I mean, at this point, they've kind of said they're not coming back. This is the way it's gonna be going forward. And I mean, like I said, there's a lot of programs that have really sprung up from the pandemic and options for parents, so I think that,
Well, I said I would only say one more thing. You can get an ABET accredited engineering degree. ABET being the accreditation you need to get a professional engineering license from Arizona State, Penn State, ODU, multiple universities. You can now get an ABET accredited engineering degree without actually going to the campus. That never existed before. And, you could always get degrees, but it wasn't something to that level. And those schools, those universities realized we have to compete. We have to be competitive with the virtual program because that's just life at this point. So I'm just saying, I'm just one person, but it's something to discuss.
I think one of the things we need answers to, Karen, because as a finance committee, we've kind of gone through looking at dollars and where we're spending them. What can versus can't we do when federal dollars are involved? And so I asked that question because going with what you're saying, we've got to be able to compete. But because we take federal dollars, we are stopped with a lot of that. So I know the executive team has heard me say repeatedly, it's $6 million, I think, if I'm correct, Randy, from a federal standpoint. So is there do we stop taking that $6 million and start competing? And, along with what Johnny said, but also from a private school perspective. And I'm not gonna misspeak because I don't know the data or the facts, but do we see private school growing in numbers? Or are they also the same where they're decreasing and going to homeschool? But I think we need to be able to compete, but there's a lot of moving targets, and Chris and I will speak on it when we do finance committee, but there's a lot of money tied to what we can or can't do that's not funded, where we're having to make up for it locally because of state or federal rules. But
Can I ask a follow-up question?
sure,
Another thing to ask, and this may be way off base, but because we're a public school system and we're taking federal dollars, state dollars, do we also have the option to charge money for that program? Is there any way to have a purchase in type? And the reason why I say that is I know for one that one of the online homeschool programs that my children have done in the past, we pay thousands of dollars a year for that. Like, I'm not saying we should charge families thousands of dollars, but if family X is paying thousands of dollars for a program and we don't have the TBO law in Virginia, so those kids cannot be involved in school sports, they can't do clubs, they can't do all those things that you can do in other states unless they are part of the school's virtual program. If we can use that for one, hey, if you do our program, you can be involved in school functions, which that's a big win for a lot of kids. I know my kids want to do that next year. And two, is there any way to have some type of buy-in that would help with our finances? Because, as opposed to paying $2,000 a year for this program, they could pay $500 a year, and these are random numbers, for buying into the public schools virtual program. That's another reason that, in a way, we could compete and bring in some money. I'm just,
Yeah, I'm hearing you. I think for us, we worry because we are getting money for them from the state. So they count just like they're sitting in our classroom, so we're already getting money. And so to charge more, I feel like it's more appealing not to have to charge because honestly, we get state money for them.
I just know
And
you said you're struggling with staffing, so I didn't know if we were sure.
we just prioritize staffing in the school, smaller class sizes. We have, and we've said this several times, a lot of small schools we're trying to keep open. And so that takes a lot of staff. And so I think it's just priority with staffing. We were not seeing the same performance in our virtual school, again, because we were having problems getting parents and kids to commit to coming in to do the required state testing and the required, everything that we're required to do. And so I think that's part of it. But we can definitely look into anything.
and look into it. We can't make them come, but we
Right.
can provide options and see what's out there. So, any other comments or questions?
I was just looking at the last page that you introduced about the capacities of the different schools. And, I see obviously, some of them are at 90 or above. But, like if they have two, for example, third grade classrooms or more, but there's room in those classrooms for more students, is it fair to just lock down the whole school? Let's say that they're at capacity for every grade besides third grade, but they do have some more room there. Or they have more room in 2 or 3 classes, but not in others, or they're at capacity. Can we have it so that it's at the discretion of the principal as opposed to just the whole school's locked down and you can't have any more in there?
We've talked about that before, and I think what we get into, and we saw this, 2 summers ago, is when you have siblings. So you bring in a student and you say, oh, we have room in third grade, and so we're going to let that student come in third grade. And then the next year they have a kindergarten brother or sister, but there's no room in kindergarten because it's just so, it's so tight in some of those grade levels. So in some instances, we were calling families saying, well, we can keep your third grader, but we have to say no to your kindergartner. And it was really hard for families. And, you know, we were also saying we were revoking zone transfers for some grade levels and not others. So sometimes it just, it causes you problems down the road. And nobody wants to be accepted to a school for just 1 or 2 years. And then people move into the school division, and then that class gets big, and then you have to revoke their zone transfer, and they've been there 2 or 3 years. So I think that's where we struggle with that.
Yeah, I mean, all that's happened. I mean, policy has actually been discussed quite a few times about zone transfers, and siblings was one big piece where, if I'm not mistaken, now we've said that if there's less than 95% capacity, then we can take siblings in those grade levels. But obviously, some of these schools are at capacity in just about every grade level. You know, it would be okay with us. I mean, we're not opposed to being flexible on certain grade levels. It's just that, you know, in some of these schools, or at least one I know, we don't have any more classrooms in the school to put teachers in. And if they grow in third grade and need another third grade teacher, we don't know where we're gonna put them. And that would be Forest Elementary. New London, I'm very concerned about that because of all the development that's coming there. I know some of these capacity numbers are probably a little bit higher. You know, we probably do have a little bit more capacity than what these state. But I think in those two instances, it's going to really push, and not just in classrooms, but if you look at the gym space, the cafeteria space, library space, all that, like at New London right now, I know they're having the Christmas programs in that tiny little gymatorium or whatever you want to call it. And it's a challenge to get all those people in there. So that's kind of what we're looking at in terms of.
I'll go ahead and say it. I mean, it's not gonna be popular. I mean, but we have reached a point where this board, we've gotta do something with the New London capacity and Otter River. You've gotta balance that out. It's not gonna be popular. We heard 2 years ago, it's not gonna be popular. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. But it's the right thing to do. If you look at these capacity issues, you've got it. Overcapacity at New London, which I know we're gonna hear, well, there's classrooms and there's spaces that we use for this and that, and that's fine. But like you heard Mark say, it's per pupil, 20, 22, 25, elementary, middle, high school. And if you've got space, great. But then we've got growth coming, and you've got students who live closer to Otter River that are attending that elementary school in New London. And again, I'm gonna be the one to say, it's not going to be popular. Our emails are filling up right now. But it's a discussion that needs to be had, because, you know, it doesn't make sense for us to have a school that's sitting at, let's see here, Otter River sitting at 65%, and New London's at 115% or 104%. It also opens up availability for preschool, which I've heard us say we really need more of that. So, you know, not saying we have to solve it tonight, but I really want this board to consider, sometimes we have to make unpopular decisions, as we've seen in the past, and I just think this is gonna be one where we've got to say, what are we gonna do? The other thing I'm gonna say, and I'll take the heat on this, 47% capacity for elementary school, where we were tight for dollars, and we tried to drive expense reduction, and we've been told on average, and Randy, keep me honest here, $800,000 a year is what it cost us on average to keep a building going from a salary, staff.
Yeah, just a little bit of clarity on that one. That would, 800,000 would be the reduction, because typically the aides and the teachers would go with the kids to whatever school they would go to. It's really the administration, clerical, custodian, and those types of support structure that wouldn't have to be duplicated with the
And I'm not
services.
talking about reducing any kind of teachers, that's not, I'm just looking from a capacity standpoint and expense. But I'm gonna leave that one alone, but I do think one of the topics that we, as this board, we need to solve, and if we're gonna do it, we need to let the staff know, let's figure out a way so we can start talking about it from a New London and Otter River of balancing that out. Growth is coming, the land is ready over there, I haven't seen any construction started yet, it's coming. Now, in the same breath, we see that the numbers in the forest zone are not slated to increase like any other zone. But if you've got school availability, I think it's the right thing to do. Staff may disagree with me, sorry if I'm throwing this out here too soon, but we gotta balance this. And, you know, again, I know New London is a great school, I know it is a great school. But if we're at 115% capacity and we've got more coming from that growth, we've gotta talk about Otter River, who, a lot of those kids live closer to that school. And by the way, Otter River is a great school as well. And, you know, we've heard from those teachers and principals and, you know, they're both great schools. So it's just a transition. But I think it's one that this board needs to take up. But we'll come on that. So, sorry. Any other questions or comments for Mark? All right, thank you, Mark. All right, informational items 3.01, 2025-05 state security grant supplemental, Mr. Hagler.
Yes, in front of you tonight for information, bring it back at the next meeting for approval. This has already been presented to the Finance and Budget Committee, and we went over this. Typically, the state has money available that we pursue each and every year for security-related items. So we submitted that, and we are awarded $74,515. $74,515. There is a local match required on that, 25%. So it's in the $94,000 range, all in, that we'll have to spend on the items that we put in for that. So this is before you all for consideration. Be happy to answer any questions. Once you approve in January, I'll have to take it over to the Board of Supervisors for approval because this is a supplemental appropriation.
Questions or comments on the state security grant? All right, thank you, sir. 3.02 policy updates, Mr. DePere.
The IGA met on November 12th to review proposed revisions to 8 policies. 3 are tied together. The AG Literacy Plan, GCA Reading Specialist, and IGBD programs for students with reading deficiencies. The 4th was DBB, Club Sports, DG, Custody and Disbursement of School Funds, DJB, Petty Fund, Cash Funds, GC, Professional Staff, and KK, School Visitors. Those will be brought back in the following month for approval.
Any questions for IGA or Mr. DePere on the policy updates that will be coming back for next month?
So you said the petty cash funds are eliminated? That would,
Yes, I don't allow for petty cash in schools anymore. We've got electronic ways of receiving funds and checks, and so we deposit that all the times. Very, very infrequent that a bookkeeper needs to make change for somebody coming in with a bill.
All right, any other questions? All right, 6.02, 25-26 school calendar. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back. It's not 6 yet. I had to, 6.01, 25-26 program of studies. Dr. Trosper, you presented last month, correct? Do I have a motion to approve as presented last month?
so moved.
I have a motion by Ms. Purvis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nelms. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Dr. Trosper, 6.01 is approved. 6.02, 25-26 school calendar. Dr. Woodford presented this last month. Do I have a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Holbrook. And do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nelms. Any discussion?
Yes, Dr. Woodford, has there been anything else that's come in from, Anybody in the public or anybody else, any other comments to that? Okay,
No comments.
beautiful, okay.
And one of the things that I had requested that's not on here, was during the winter break to be updated to say Christmas break, Christmas, winter holiday break, and that's not updated, but I just wanna make that statement. So I will be voting no for it. Doesn't mean I don't approve the calendar. It's just, I had asked for it to be updated and it's not there. All right, any other comments, questions? All right, those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? No?
Why was it not updated? So typically when there's a request from one board member, there's an ask for consensus. So unless the board directs as a whole board, usually we don't make a change unless the whole board has consented to that. So when I went back in the notes, Mr. Hill did ask for that, but no one else said anything, so I left it as it was.
Want consent?
Well,
You would have to do
you have to change your motion then.
You have to change your motion for consent now.
I'm sorry, we've already voted though, right?
You're in the discussion part.
Okay.
But there's been a motion and a second,
Okay,
but if you want to change anything, you can
Withdraw
withdraw
my
the motion. The motion can be withdrawn, and a new motion can be made with specifications, and, yeah.
I withdraw my motion.
So then we need to make a new motion, right?
Correct.
all right, so Diana, we had taken the vote, and then she asked the question. So I wanna make sure we're in the clear of doing that.
That is correct, but we had not polled the board, so it is not complete.
Perfect, I just wanted to make sure, okay. All right,
I can. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the 25-26 school calendar with the one change of changing winter holiday to Christmas break / winter holiday.
okay, we have a motion by Mr. Daniels, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Holbrook. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, 6.03, 2025 board budget calendar. Mr. Hagler had presented that. Do I have a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Holbrook. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nelms. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Board budget calendar passes. 6.04, 2025 board meeting calendar as presented by Mr. DePere. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Nelms. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Daniels. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, and 6.05, approval of policy updates presented at the November 14th, 2024 board meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Daniels. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Purvis. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, 6.05 is approved. All right. All right, I'm gonna, do I have a motion to go into closed session?
Mr. Chair, pursuant to Code of Virginia 2.2-3711A.1 to discuss the assignment, appointment, performance, disciplining, and release of contract for specific school board employees.
I have a motion by Mr. Daniels. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Nelms. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay? All right, we are in closed session. motion to come out of closed session?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Daniels. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Holbrook. Any discussion? All those in favor to come out of closed session signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we're out of closed session. Ms. Johnson, if you will.
Where Bedford County School Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And where section 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Bedford County School Board hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meetings which this certification applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were discussed or considered.
Yes.
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 All right, next is public comment. Public comment portion of tonight's agenda is limited to 40 minutes. Speakers are asked to state their name and voting district. The school board is here to listen to your comments, but will not engage or respond to speakers during this 40-minute period. Please remember that this is a public meeting and that we expect all speakers to refrain from any foul, profane, abusive, or hateful language during their comments or any time while in attendance during this meeting. We also ask that speakers keep their remarks objective and about the school in nature. Please keep all comments limited to matters related to the public schools, and any comments that are harassing or amount to a personal attack against any identifiable individual, whether board member or staff or student, or having the potential to cause unnecessary delay or disruption to this meeting are prohibited. This is a public meeting for public matters. If the speaker is not present when their name is called, we will proceed with the name on the next name on the list. An individual who has not signed up to speak may not substitute for that time slot. Individuals will have 4 minutes to address the board. An alarm will sound when an individual has 30 seconds remaining, and a second alarm will sound when the allotted 4 minutes have expired. When this second alarm sounds, please discontinue speaking and allow the next person in line to come to the podium. Should you be able to finish your comments, please send or give them to Ms. Johnson, and she will give them to board members. Please do not adjust the microphone at the podium as it has been positioned for optimum audio quality. There is no one signed up for public comment tonight. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak? All right, with that, we will close public comment and we will move to the approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? We're gonna have a motion by Mr. Daniels. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nelms. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Sure covered everything. All right, matters from the board, committee reports. Mr. Knight, you have anything?
We have a meeting tomorrow for VA, so we haven't met since last.
CTE committee meets again in January.
I'll skip over you, go ahead.
Okay, we had STEM and Gov school meetings and everything's on budget and on schedule, so everything's good. The CPO meeting is reevaluating the family life education. We've put together a committee to reevaluate that, and I believe Dr. Trosper is in charge of that. So we'll be hearing more about that, just reevaluating if we need to update it or change anything about it. And Dr. Trosper, when is that supposed to be, do you know?
We haven't set a date yet, but we're getting close. We've got the committee identified. We'll meet sometime in January.
Thank you.
Mr. Daniels?
For the IGA, we actually met on November 22nd with the executive team and with Delegate Tim Griffin. And we just kind of talked through, he was asking, what could he do in Richmond, what concerns we had that he could bring back to them as they're looking through the budget and stuff. So I think that one of the things that was pretty eye-opening when we were talking was that there are certain positions SOQ positions, standard quality positions, that we are just not funded by the state. And that falls on us locally. So for example, I'll give you two quick examples. They're pretty eye-opening. I think for Delegate Griffin, they were eye-opening too. We have 21 schools. Do you know how many principals we have? 21. Do you know how many we're approved for? 19. You know, make it make sense. It doesn't make sense. For teachers' aides, which are for special needs aides, it's required for them to have aides as per their IEP or other things. My son has a full-time aide that's with him. He can't get through the school day without it. He just needs it. That helps him with lunch, that helps him with bathrooms, stuff like that. We have 144 aides here in Bedford County. We are funded for 12 of them. That's to the tune of, locally, we have to come up with $4.5 million every year that we are not funded for. Those are two quick little examples. So when we go into these budget meetings, we say we're scratching our head a lot of times trying to find money that just doesn't exist. And those are just two line items on our budget. So we brought that up to Delegate Griffin with some other things that affect the teachers. A lot of reporting that is redundant or outdated or just takes a ton of time. Things that they need to get certified. I think there were certifications and different things that they need. There's a lot of busy work that someone thinks it's a great idea to pass this law, and then there's ramifications, and it is what it is. So we're trying to eliminate some of those regulations, some of those things, and saying, hey, when there's money, when there's a surplus, we've got items that we need to go after. So I think that those were two eye-opening things. We talked to him also about funding for buildings that are super old. I think a lot of people in the state, a lot of counties are having those same issues. And, you know, he said that he would bring those things up. So I think the more we talk about it, the better it is. But I don't think the general public understands that there's a lot of things that we're just not sitting on a bunch of cash. We have obligations, and sometimes those obligations that we cannot, these kids need those aids, and to not be funded to that tune, that is a ton of money. Every year, we gotta come up with locally. So what's that mean of things that we can't do? There's a laundry list, you guys all know. So I think it was eye-opening. I'm glad that we had that meeting, and hopefully we can keep having conversations to get things done.
From a finance committee, I mean, Chris just spoke about several things that we have discussed with that, and then he took it to Delegate Griffin. We've completed the finance committee going line item by line item. We found a few things where we asked questions about, said, hey, can we look at, readjusting the budget on that? But what we found is a lot of the funding that we have, it's required. And so when you start asking, well, that's required because it's state funding, or that's required because we take federal dollars. So, the other things that we're looking at too is we've got several positions that still haven't received steps. Leanne, keep me honest, 2009, the steps that haven't been adjusted, is that correct?
From 2000, I think it was the years 2011 through 14.
11 to 14, okay.
So 11, there's 6 years in there that they didn't receive steps. And, yeah.
So those are things that, we think are important as, we talk about being able to compete. We're competing for our students, but we're also competing, and we're learning this quickly, we're competing for our teachers and our staff. And so we've got to be competitive. And so as we begin budget conversations, and I've asked Randy for us to start having those sooner in the year. We're going to have another finance committee meeting on January 9th for some initial discussion, and then we're going to be bringing those to the board quickly in into January, February timeframe.
Yeah, we have a work session scheduled at the end of January, and then hopefully try to get a preliminary approved budget by this board so we can engage the Board of Supervisors as soon as you approve that and what our ask is on that. So yeah, we'll probably have about 3 more work sessions with the committee in January. So we're trying to get it done as quickly as possible.
And just, giving this board a heads up as we work through that. I mean, we never want to go ask for more, but we're at a point where we're going to have to ask for more money. I mean, we've got positions that we've got to fund. We've got people who have been here that haven't had step increases. We've got to look at all of that. We've still got buildings that we're having to spend money on from an expense standpoint, which I know we've got that money set aside and we've got plans. So we've got to have those conversations, but it's going to be where we have to come And I wanna be able to have the conversation, and that's why I asked for Randy to set it up early so we can start having those work sessions. So we know ahead of time what we need to take over to the county to say, this is what we need and here's why. So just wanna make the board aware of that from the finance committee. Did I miss anything on?
No, I think the only other thing, maybe you're gonna talk about it in your closing comments, was that how we're actually doing with the money
Oh.
that we get.
Absolutely. I had asked Karen to make sure I was correct. You know, we talk about money and we talk about, trying to recruit teachers and we talk about having positions and doing this and doing that. And we talk about testing and, I tease Dr. Woodford all the time of, well, we're changing it again. How do we compare apples to apples? We don't, because the state keeps changing it. But what I will tell you and what is great for Bedford County is out of 132 public school systems, we're number 36. That's pretty impressive with what we do, the number of students we have and the money that we're spending to be 36 of 132. So academically, correct. Academic performance. And I think that's something we should all be proud of. And to the team and executive team, thank you guys for what you're doing. To our teachers that are watching, that's huge for us to be able to stand out. And again, that's how we compete. And so we've got to make sure we're at the forefront of being able to continue to be, and of course, like I told them this week, 36 is great, but I'd love to be 25 next year and then, working our way toward that. So thank you for reminding me on that. I had it written down right here. All right, comments and concerns from the school board?
I mean, yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that, again, tough decisions, and we're all gonna work really hard, really diligently to come up with the best budget that we can, so we can get the most we can out of that. Definitely some concerning things, and I hope everybody heard, what I said on just one line item that it's not even close to funded. And it's huge, we need to have it, those kids deserve that. Just on top of that, other than that, it's December, there's a lot of reflection that happens during this time, a lot of things to be thankful for. And so I hope that over the next couple of weeks, that you're with your families at Christmas, and at the New Year, reflect on what's been in this year, reflect on where you're going, and just take time to just breathe and to relax, and everything's gonna be okay. I think that's one thing that we always gotta try to be centered when it comes to that. So enjoy what you have, be grateful, be thankful, and be ready to kind of get after it in 2025. That's it.
Ms. Purvis?
So last week we had our School Board Member Alliance symposium. And Mr. Holbrook and I both went to that symposium. It was very educational. We had some surprise guest speakers, which were Winsome Sears, Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears, Governor Youngkin, and Attorney General Miyares, and so that was a special surprise. We had some really great speakers as well, who gave us a lot of information. It was exciting to come away from with some exciting things to try to incorporate. One of the things that I'm gonna try to do is, starting in January, is start going to different schools and just being available for teachers, so or staff to come and talk to me, meet with me, just for the sake of transparency as well as just availability. So I'm planning to start in Boonesboro Elementary and Big Island Elementary, which are in my district, in January, as well as trying to get over to Forest Middle and JF, and then work towards Forest and into the Liberty Zone, and at some point, hopefully, and get over to Stanton River. The other thing is I wanted to encourage you, I know there's sometimes the Christmas holidays can be hard, family dynamics and so on. Just seek peace, and sometimes keeping our mouths shut is the best thing to do, but especially spend some time just reflecting on the beauty of our Savior who came to earth to save us, and I'm so thankful for him and for all of the many things that he has blessed us with here in Bedford County and in the U.S.
Mr. Nelson?
No comments, just wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Mr. Holbrook?
Praying for a lot of snow.
Merry Christmas.
Mr. Knight?
So over the years, I've always heard people talk about how difficult holidays can be for people who have lost family members during that year. I have experienced, some loss in my life, but this year my wife lost her father in the summer, and so I've watched her over the last month preparing for Thanksgiving and now Christmas, and the grief is real, and to watch her hurt thinking about not being with her dad on Christmas is tough. So it's reality for me for the first time in my life that that's a real thing, facing the holidays when you've lost someone, and I think it probably lasts for years. I could imagine. We talk a lot about Toys for Tots and Christmas trees and angels and things that are all very important during Christmas. And I would just like to add, for this year, from my personal experience, if you know someone who has lost someone, and there's multiple people within our Bedford County school community that have lost young children, husbands, wives, fathers, mothers, that we all know. I would just encourage you to take the opportunities you get to reach out to them and show them some extra love during Christmas. It really isn't about them receiving gifts or anything. It's just it's just a show of support and love, and I think it goes a long way. And it's going to be it's a very good time for most of us over this next few weeks, but for some people it's the hardest part of their year. So Merry Christmas.
All right. It's been fun watching some of the teacher activities the last couple of weeks of the countdown to Christmas break. So I say to the teachers, hang in there. You're almost at the finish line, or the halfway mark, I should say, and you'll get some time off. To the students, finish the year strong, or finish the year 24 and the semester strong. We're looking forward to January, and we'll be here when you get back. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I hope everyone has some downtime and you're able to enjoy yourself and your family over the next couple of weeks. So, all right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Nelms. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Purvis. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned.
I told Donnie to call.